Hi, my name is Josh. I'm a senior, and I'm concentrating in middle school reading and language arts. I generally like realistic fiction, and I'm really interested in it because I'm going to be teaching it eventually, like 4 months down the road. So I need to get into it.
Hi everybody. You don't usually see me in this kind of capacity, but I'm Sarah Todd. I'm Director for Talent and Career Development here at Eastern. But you might not know, I was also an English major, and I love writing fiction, and my favorite type of fiction is, I love young adult, pretty much any kind of young adult, but myself personally, I'm a sci-fi fantasy nerd. That is how I roll, that's what I write. But I really love children's and young adults books all over the place, so if that's your jam, please talk to me. I don't get to talk about that enough in my job, so bring it on.
I guess I'll go. So you guys already know me. I'm Lily. I think fiction is probably my main kind of genre. Like Sarah, I also really love sci-fi, fantasy, and like young adult stuff. So sorry you guys cannot write it for this class.
Too bad.
Yeah, too bad. Sorry.
I'm Megan. Same as Sarah and Lily. I love fantasy and fiction. Sorry you guys can't write that. Take the fiction advanced writing class. It's good with Rebecca. I personally prefer to edit instead of write because I like just going through it and helping people make their work better, which is partly why I liked this class. I get to help people with their work. So yeah.
I'm Tammy. I love anything writing, and like Megan, I love editing and like going through all that stuff. But I particularly like fiction in like fairy tales or retelling of stories in a different way. Anything that like twists a different story is really fun to me. So yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, Debra is a fabulous former student of mine who is an incredible fiction writer, and I'm really excited that we get to do her story today. This is actually part of a series of linked stories that she's working on, but this story can stand on its own as well, which is why we wanted to just look at this one story for today. Notice it's within your required page length. How nice is that? So you can see exactly what can be accomplished in just a few pages. So we're going to talk through the story as if we are in a workshop group with Debra. So let's begin with the protagonist. Who wants to share that?
Jenny.
Yeah, Mama.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And what do we know about Jenny?
A mother.
And a wish.
Okay. Race?
African American.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's important to the story too. Yeah, good. Antagonists. What do we have? We always want to name several people or forces that get in the way of the main character.
I said Robert and his boys.
I said the posse. Yeah, the posse. I also said patriarchy.
Ooh, nice.
I feel like she's got a lot of feminist feeling going on.
Along with that, I said a lack of friends or a lack of support.
Yeah,
You know,
so
like-
true.
Ooh, nice. Good observation.
Yeah, yeah.
I even added the movie in.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool.
I
Yeah.
also added Valerie, her daughter.
Good. And that's a fabulous example of how an antagonist is not necessarily a bad guy. In this case, the daughter gets in the way of her journey, but is not a negative character at all. Great. I mentioned the movie too, specifically the moment where Audrey Hepburn kneels before Rex with the slippers in hand. There's that whole moment, and then the whole song, "A Woman Should Be More Like a Man." That part of the movie seems to be what really interrupts her journey. I also said racial identity. Did anybody have that? Racial class identity? Because there seemed to be a lot of pushback to their decision to move to an all-white neighborhood from their apartment in the city. Do you have that too? Yeah. Anything else for antagonists?
I actually also had Jenny's anger toward Robert and towards Robert's friends who wouldn't help them move.
Good. So not just his friends, but specifically her anger point of view.
First person.
Agreed. We know that from the use of I. Psychic distance. You want to have a go at that?
I said that it was a close psychic distance because we like pretty much for the whole story, and we hear what she's thinking, and we like almost always know how she's feeling.
Anybody have anything?
On top of that, I also feel like she's like holding something back because we don't know why they moved, why they left. So wonder what that's all about.
I agree. Yeah, and I also felt like I understood why she was upset with the friends of Robert, but I felt like she was withholding why she was so upset with him because well, I'll get into this later, but he moved the refrigerator by himself.
Yeah.
Right? He seems like a pretty decent guy from what we know of him, but she's really angry with him too. And I felt like she wasn't quite telling us that.
Yeah, I kind of had a similar struggle with that where like, I thought Debra did a really good job with Jenny's emotions where I was caught up in them as like, oh, Robert's such a jerk. I was like, why is Robert a jerk?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah.
So we're led into the emotions, but they're not quite clarified for us. And I wondered maybe they're not clarified for her. And maybe Jenny doesn't quite know why she's upset with Robert. Yeah. All right. Students, if you have anything different from what we're saying, if you did the craft sheet, feel free to raise your hand and chime in too. Okay, so sentence. Who wants to write the sentence? The sentence has a very clear form to it.
Oh, gosh.
Great.
I will say that I cheated a little and I looked up the year My Fair Lady was.
I did too.
That's
good.
I'm assuming that that's what it was. So I said in Philadelphia, PA, in 1956, Jenny and her daughter see My Fair Lady, which brings Jenny's struggles with patriarchy and visibility to a head.
Nice. I got a different year than you.
Did you?
Yeah, I got 1964.
That's
What?
the year I got.
Same.
Wikipedia. If it's on the internet, it has to be true.
Maybe one was the musical and one was the movie.
Oh, true. Oh, man.
That would be my guess.
I will go with what you went. What you got?
Could it just be an old theater replaying it?
I thought
about that too.
But there's a line in there at the very beginning that says, in the very first full paragraph, it says, Haverty Theater presenting My Fair Lady. The new feature had signs everywhere.
Yeah.
So that led me to believe that we really were in 1964.
Ah, it's gotta be what it is.
I also thought it was old because when she goes to buy the tickets, the lady's mad at her because her dress is creased.
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah.
True. I didn't even
Oh
think
yeah,
of
and
that.
I just learned that in the past, when you go to the movies, it's like a very formal event and you want to look nice.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So yeah.
Just like today.
When you roll out of bed in your pajamas. That's great, yeah. So, Sarah mentioned cheating, but I actually do want you to do that kind of cheating with one of other stories. It's a better story because Debra did not say, it was the year 1964. That's that far removed psychic distance we just talked about. Instead, she inserts little details that give you the context for the era. So when you're reading one another's stories, feel free to Google, you should, and figure out the era that way. Good. Okay, let us go to my favorite part, the crisis action of the story.
So I said it's when, I think it's when Jenny decides not to watch the play a second time and Valerie asks.
I had that too.
I actually said when she realized that they were alone.
Ooh, in the theater?
Mm-hmm.
And why?
Because I think that's the moment she suddenly realizes that they really are on their own, and that I think even with the idea of her being with her daughter, that she feels like I'm gonna have to do this by myself because there's no one else around her that's like she had people that she could count on, and even if she didn't like them, she could count on them, and now they're gone.
That's awesome. Yeah.
I had something really different. I had when he was like, good, he said, you can take Val, I plan on meeting up with the boys. Like, she didn't argue. like, cause it's back then, like, so she like respected her husband in like a womanly like mother way, and she just took the daughter and she went on with her like way, even though like that's not what like she wanted. Like she asked him, but he was like, no, I'm gonna be with my boys. Like you have to like watch the children, kind of thing. So like I took that as that was a curse.
That's cool. I think that's a really clear decision that works well. My only critique of that would be that it occurs early in the story instead of later. But it's possible that in that final moment that Tammy mentioned, that she's rethinking that earlier decision.
Yeah.
Like, should I have spoken up to him? Should I continue to remain the submissive, slipper-bearing wife or not? You know, I think that could be a moment that she comes back to later.
I'm actually glad you mentioned that, because like I was kind of leaning towards that moment too, because that's a very crucial moment. But at the end, like there was, like I read, especially like, no baby, I said, taking Valerie's hand, it's time to go, once is enough. And I just felt like this complete tonal shift in Jenny.
Good.
So I was going back between those two though, yeah.
Good, and that is what you should be looking for, some kind of change in the protagonist. And in that moment, she means to say one thing and decides the other, and that seems like a big shift for her.
Did anyone else put down about the eyes? When she saw Robert's look in Rex's eyes, that was very telling too, of her realizing, oh my gosh, I am Audrey. We are one right now.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Okay, so I have a question about the crisis action. Like, I thought it was her decision to not see the movie a second time. But I'm wondering what that decision means in terms of her husband. So I thought it could be two things, and I put this on my critique form because I needed to like think it out in words. Maybe this will be helpful for Debra. One, it seemed like maybe she was standing up to her husband somehow, okay, in that moment, or was planning to when she got home. That's one way I think you can read it, because in the story it says, instead, shaking the vision from my mind, I rose from my seat. So that led me to believe she wasn't going to do what Audrey Hepburn did. She's going to do something else. Okay. But I do think you could interpret her final decision as a decision to return home, head bowed, in humility, and put the slippers on his feet, in pity because his boys left him to move alone. Recognizing that she doesn't need to be more like a man, especially since the men don't show up, but she actually needs to be more like a woman and submissive, and that is what will bring their family happiness. I think you can read it that way too, because at the very end of the story, as she's leaving the theater, it says, my personal performance of a classic scene. So I thought, is she acting out the scene with Audrey Hepburn giving in to her submissive state? Or is she defying it? So what do you all think in that moment?
I mean, I feel like this ties into the resolution, how she feels about what her decision was. And honestly, I also wasn't sure. I'm like, is she defiant in this decision? Like, resolute, like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Like, but we don't know what the implication of that decision is. Like, what is she going to do when she goes home? So yeah, that's something that I was wondering.
And it's unclear too if is she gonna try to change things for herself, or is she saying once is enough, saying once is enough for me. Like, I've lost my shot. I'm not gonna have that, but my daughter's gonna get a great education. My daughter's gonna be different. So once is enough. Things will be different for her. So
I really like that reading of it, especially in the last, I guess, sentence here, where it's like she grabs Valerie's hand, and like when she talks to Valerie, then it's still endearing. Like she's like, no baby, it's still like there's still endearment there. But when she grabs Valerie's hand, I put my grip on her little palm, remained firm as I led the way down the dimming aisle. So kind of like she's deciding to lead Valerie in a different direction that she wanted. So I like that a lot, because I didn't pick up on that first. I thought it was like, oh, she's going to be defiant to her husband, but I really like that.
That is cool. I like that a lot too. I'd love to see that play out more. I think that answers a lot of